The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show. I hope everybody is having a good week. Today's Wednesday, December 18th, and we're going to be covering the news. A bunch of stories, and then, of course, I will take questions from you, so you get to decide what we talk about today. All right, we're going to be covering, we're definitely going to be covering big business, like it, hate it, what's the deal with big business, particularly United Healthcare. We'll talk a bit more about that. We will be talking about the continued resolution bill that is going to be passed by, I assume, by the House in the coming hours, and then by the Senate. And we're going to talk about how Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are flipping out over this. They have discovered politics. They didn't know it existed. And suddenly, here it is, right in front of their eyes. So we will talk about that. It's entertaining to watch and really curious to see how this plays out. Now, I'm excited to see how all this plays out, because it's pretty, the showdown is coming. Here we go. All right, and then we'll talk about Germany and China and TikTok and, brief commentary on Tucker and Candace's reaching new lows, if that is possible. They're so low, you think they couldn't go lower, and then they go lower. So we'll talk about all of that. Reminder, your questions. It's your questions, basically dictate the second, third hour of the show. More questions, the longer I go, the fewer questions, the shorter the show is. And of course, those questions and stickers, like Ryan just did, and Silvano started us off with the $20 sticker. Those questions and stickers make it possible for this show to keep running, because it's a listener-supported show for the most part. Few sponsors, mostly just you guys. All right, a few things just before we get started. Reminder, December 31st, we got the big fundraising show. December 31st, it'll be a 4-hour, 3-hour. Last year, I think it was 4 hours. $15,000 is the goal of the show. 30 people doing $500 each, and we got there. It should be doable. We'll see. It's a pretty ambitious goal, and that's December 31st, 1 p.m. East Coast time. We're also, I'm going to be putting out a schedule in the next few days of the sponsored show. We've got a show on healthcare. We've got a show on deregulating finance. And we will have 2 shows on immigration and on China, either with Alex on here interviewing me, Alex Epstein, or him sending me questions in advance. But those are 4 sponsored shows. I'm going to try to do them all before the end of the year. We'll see. But that is the goal. If not, it'll sneak into the first week in January, which is fine as well. I'll also be letting you know about the schedule for the weekend and whether we have shows on the weekend, and if so, what will be covered. It might be that some of these shows, like the sponsored shows, will be on Saturday or Sunday. I'll let you know about that. All right, let's get started. So I got a lot of backlash in the comment section about my positive discussion of the CEO of United Healthcare. And part of it is, well, you don't know him. Maybe he's a really bad guy. And insurance companies, you don't realize insurance companies, they deny coverage all the time. Well, that's part of the contract. That's part of what insurance is. It doesn't always give you the coverage that you think you have. You should read the fine print. You should read the contract you have with them. But put that aside and say they deny coverage all the time. The evil monsters, big business, and I got this whole slew of things of you always defend big business. You're always on the side of big business. And of course, I always get accused of betraying Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand would have never defended big business. So let me just remind you, Ayn Rand's last talk, Photo Forum, was not Photo Forum, it was actually in New Orleans, was about big business being the persecuted minority. So the whole talk was basically defending big business and the fact that it was persecuted by politicians, persecuted by the public, hated by everybody, and how unjust and wrong that was, and how big business needs to stand up for itself and stop sanctioning, its destroyers. But here's the question: what is it about big business? Why do I defend big business mostly? Right? Why? And we live in a crony world. We live in a world that's not capitalist. It's not a free market. A lot of these companies lobby government all the time. Certainly, the health insurance industry does. It's a mixed economy. Why defend business, any business, but particularly big, successful business, in a mixed economy? And here's the point. These businesses are providing you with life-saving products, life-saving stuff, every day, all the time, in spite of a mixed economy. They find ways to overcome the regulations, the controls, the taxes, the insanity that is government, the insanity that is a mixed economy, and keep chugging along, keep providing services, keep making a profit. Are these all government-protected monopolies? Well, if they were government-protected monopolies, wouldn't you think that United Healthcare would have a profit margin that's higher than 6%? Apple has 25%. If United Healthcare is a government monopoly, why doesn't it have profit margins that big? Their profits are actually pretty low. Of all your healthcare people you're engaged with in healthcare, from doctors to hospitals to clinics to MRI places to all screening, whatever, insurance companies actually have the lowest profit margins. Now, granted, I am a customer of United Healthcare. And my experience with United Healthcare has been amazing. I think I said this once. When I had fusion on my back, I had major back surgery. They fused L4-5. I told you my experience in the hospital and all that. What I forgot to tell you is I got like 8-second opinions because I didn't want to have surgery. Like, I don't want to fuse L4-5. It sucks, and it's usually leads to a lifetime of problems. I was in such pain, something had to be done. So I kept going doctor after doctor after doctor to find a doctor somewhere out there who would tell me I didn't need the fusion. And they all said I needed it, so I ended up choosing the surgeon I wanted. And here's the thing. United Healthcare paid for every single one of those visits. Then I got to choose the doctor. Me. Now, you tell me you can do that in a socialized healthcare system like Canada or England, or for that matter, any socialized healthcare system in the world. I got to choose the doctor. I got to choose the surgeon, which basically allowed me to choose the hospital. And I got amazing, fantastic care. Sadly, that doctor no longer takes United Healthcare. Maybe they didn't treat him that well. But me, they treated great. Now, granted, some of you might have your coverage denied. But that's the point, right? Insurance companies are not there to just pay for all your health care without any evaluation. That's not their job. They can't make money that way. So the fact that they deny coverage is part of the business, sure. Now, given all that, does it mean that every big business it provides great service all the time? Well, of course not. running a business is complicated, hard, and often big businesses fail in big parts of what they do. And in a true free market, there'd be more competition probably. Or at the very least, big businesses would fear competition more, and therefore their customer service would be much better. But this is the world we live in. We live in a mixed economy. We live with government controls, particularly in healthcare, over every aspect of what's going on. And in spite of that, United Healthcare pays my medical bills. Now, I pay them a lot of money, but I'm getting my money's worth. I wish we didn't have the system that we have. I wish I could just buy a catastrophic health insurance plan and pay for everything else out of pocket. I wish there was a Medicare and Medicaid. I wish, that hospitals advertise their prices and that you could shop for doctors. I wish for a lot of things, but that's not reality. Reality is the system we have. And in that system we have, big business, among them big insurance companies, make our lives better. And it's harder for them to make our lives better in this system. Because in a competitive system, in a free market, you just have to deal with the market. Hard enough. In the world in which we live, you have to deal with bureaucrats and governments. And it's a testament to their productive genius that they are capable of doing that and still provide us with the product. To resent business for what government is doing to us is unbelievably unjust. It's just wrong. We should be thanking business and pledging to work harder and better to try to liberate them from the evils of regulations and controls and basically big, intrusive, rights-violating government, which is what we have. Instead, the energy in our society is all oriented towards, we hate business, we hate big business. Take that energy and put it towards, we want to limit government. We want to, shrink the scope of government. We want to deregulate completely healthcare. But of course, that's not what people want. People want free healthcare, free in quotes, right? There is no free healthcare. They want, ultimately, other people to pay for their healthcare, or they think that's what they want. They believe they want socialized medicine. In that context, of course, healthcare is the villain. I saw a stat today that something like 41% of young people in a recent survey thought that it was justified, the killing of the CEO of United Healthcare. I mean, that is so evil and so disgusting and so despicable. And the idea that I get criticized for saying a few nice things about a CEO of a big business. Whoa. It was 17% of all Americans, but a chunk of young people. So our system sucks, is I think the technical word. There's no question about that. Our system is far from ideal, no question about that. And our big businesses probably are not as, for sure, are not as productive and as efficient and as customer-oriented as they would be in a free market, for sure. But our system is dramatically better than socialized healthcare because of the efforts of private practitioners, including big business, to overcome government regulations and controls and the randomness and the pettiness and the horrors of what government inflicts on them, overcome all that and still provide us with services. And, I don't begrudge United Healthcare its profit. Quite the contrary. I want them to make money so they can keep investing, keep making their operations more efficient, and and be able to, in the future, maybe be better at denying less coverage. But the idea that if you buy insurance, you therefore must always get the coverage you expect is delusional. That doesn't happen in any other kind of insurance. It depends on the terms of the contract. Read your insurance contract. Now, granted, you don't have a choice today because of a mixed economy. You buy through your employer. Well, complain to your employer. They're buying whatever coverage they're getting, the contract that they have with the insurance company. That's what's dictating it. Our banks and fintech are antiquated to a large extent because they're too small. They're too small. So if you want to expend energy, if you want to expend passion, expend it on deregulating insurance and medicine. But the reality is, CEOs of big business are productive geniuses to juggle all the things they have to juggle, to maintain any kind of rationality in the kind of crazy world they have to live in, to be able to continue to employ people and provide all of us with a service in spite of the insanity of what they face, particularly in the healthcare industry. It's just stunning. And we should appreciate that. It's not a job most of us, an overwhelming majority of us, couldn't do it. The stress, just the sheer number of things you have to manage. CEO of any business, a big business in particular, is maybe the most complex, difficult job in the world. And the reality that we don't appreciate that goes back to we don't appreciate business. We don't appreciate what business does. We have no sense as a culture of what the productive process involves, the kind of decisions that are made, and the kind of decisions that need to be made, and the consequence for ill or for good of those decisions. The fact that CEOs have very short tenures, they don't last very long, both because of fatigue and because of the fact that boards of directors fire them so quickly. It is among the most valuable positions in the world, require amazing skills, and yet, I guess we live in a time in America, of all countries in the world, in America, where shooting a CEO is just, that's okay. What the hell? They're greedy. They make a lot of money. Think about what that says of our culture more than any other thing that's happening in our culture right now. More than anything else. How un-American that is. How un-American that is. And how destructive that is. How destructive that is with regard to our future. Our future. If we cannot stand up and support the people who are making that future a reality, and you say, oh no, it's startups, it's small businesses. Yeah, but small businesses that all want to be big business. And the successful ones become big business. NVIDIA was once a little business, now it's a big business. Apple was once a little business, now it's a big business. Every one of the names that you know once was a small business, now it's a big business. And the startups today that are going to be really, really successful are going to be big businesses. That's how it works. But if we're disgusted and annoyed, understandably, at the American healthcare system, which, by the way, is the best in the world, so you need to start there. The alternative that pretty much everybody wants, including, by the way, Donald Trump, who in 2016 suggested that what he wanted was the Australian system, which is single-payer, government-run healthcare system. And has recently said that he is going to advocate for getting rid of the middleman. Middleman? That sound familiar? Socialized medicine has no middleman. That's good, right? Good. No, middlemen, a huge value to the system. So yes, there are real problems with the American healthcare system. But in comparison to the rest of the world, we should be celebrating. And The solution is not to attack the CEOs of big business. The solution is not to attack doctors, hospitals, clinics, drug companies, big pharma, and big insurance. The solution is the exact opposite. Support them and attack government and insist on deregulation and freeing up the market system. And then we'll get an even better system than we have today. But you don't understand that by attacking the American healthcare system, the producers in the American healthcare system, the producers, what you are actually doing is setting us up for socialized healthcare, setting us up for the government to take it all over. And it's going to be bipartisan. I mean, reality is Trump and Republicans did not repeal Obamacare, will not repeal Obamacare, even though Obamacare made a bad system worse. They will not do it. Because to actually repeal it, you'd have to have an alternative. An alternative would actually be more freedom. And the last thing they want, the people in our political class, Trump included, is to give us more freedom. Sadly, that is the reality. All right, so yes, I will continue to defend big business. I continue to condemn cronyism, and I continue to separate the two out and continue to recognize that in today's world, if you're a big business, if you're a business in general, you have to deal with government. And then the question is, are you adding value? Are you being productive? Or are you just leeching off of the government? Most businesses in America, big and small, are productive businesses in spite of them having to deal with government. In spite of that. All right. That is my little spiel on a big business. So, the House today is going to vote on a massive 1,500-plus page bill that will keep the government functioning, keep the government running until March. This is how Americans do their budget. God forbid we actually plan long term. God forbid we actually do things with a perspective of, what's good for this country. No, we do things last minute. We cram into bills all the different special interest groups, all the pressure groups, all the things everybody wants, all the giveaways. And we keep extending the government. We don't strategize about who needs what. We just, you got $1 million last time? Okay, you get $1 million plus a little bit this time. Nobody actually sits back and thinks, well, maybe they don't need $1 million. Maybe they should go to zero. Maybe they should get $5 million because it's really exciting. So right now, there is a, $230-something billion bill? Is it 230? It's 1,500 pages, $280 billion. It needs to be passed by the House of Representatives today. It will then be passed by the Senate on Friday, and the government will not shut down. Saved by the bell again. The bill not only continues spending the way it is right now, just says, okay, all departments of government, just keep on spending. There's strategy for you, strategic thinking, right? Just keep on spending. It also has a renewal of the Farm Bill for an extra year because they didn't do that in a separate bill this year. I guess they couldn't come to an agreement. And by the way, the Farm Bill, which is basically massive government subsidy for farmers, and here's big business for you, primarily for big farmers, like Archer Midland Daniels and others. That Farm Bill is going to be extended for one more year at $130 billion. And then, of course, there's the disaster relief bill for all the hurricane damage that's been caused this year. And of course, we know the government has to cover that. Wouldn't it be better if we had big insurance companies covering those losses? Who could actually charge market rates for the insurance, for flood insurance and hurricane insurance and wind insurance and whatever insurance, right? Home insurance, all that insurance, instead of the government backstopping it all with $100 billion. Nobody objects to that anymore, right? And then, since farmers are not getting enough, and since Trump's tariffs, I'm not bringing up tariffs for nothing. It's not just me taking another stab at Trump, although it works out that way. Trump's tariffs in his first term caused a reaction from the Chinese. They started buying fewer soybeans from the United States. The Brazilians, they started buying it from Brazil, I guess, and fewer soybeans. So Trump, in his genius, brilliance, to compensate farmers for the fact that he had screwed them by not making it possible for them to sell to China, provided them with a subsidy. Well, that subsidy, 5 years later, needs to be renewed. So that's another $10 billion for farmers, separate, because it's a separate line item. So $130 billion for Farm Bill, $100 billion disaster relief, $10 billion just for fun for farmers, and another $8 billion for the Francis Scott Key Bridge replacement. Yeah. So you've got the continuation of discretionary spending, and then on top of that, you've overlaid $50 billion. Now, that's not all. This bill also includes raises, significant pay raises for Congress and Senate, because they've done such a good job. And they're such good strategic long-term thinkers, and they're not keeping everything at the last minute. Oh, wait a minute. Anyway, we're giving them a raise, big raise. But also, in this 1,500 pages, there's 72 pages worth of pandemic preparedness and response policy, which is basically confirming that what was done during lockdowns was okay. Let me remind you, this is a Republican Congress led by Speaker Johnson, who is like as conservative, religious conservative as it gets. Also, here is something called a renewal of something called the Global Engagement Center. Sounds World Economic Forum like. It sounds like maybe the Global Engagement Center is actually behind it all. Maybe they're running the world. Maybe it's them. Then you've got 17 different pieces of commerce legislation. You've got a bill in there inside this 1,500 pages that is setting us up for a new football stadium in Washington, D.C. That's a high priority, I think, for Congress right now. And not only did Congress, Senate, and House get a pay raise, a good pay raise, but they also get a get out of Obamacare, free card, so that they don't have to abide by Obamacare rules. So I don't know. I mean, $380 billion. And, 1,500 pages. Somebody did a calculation. Let me see if I can find this, of how long it would take to read this bill. By the way, members of Congress are going to get a pay raise from $174,000 to $243,000. So that is like a $70,000 pay increase. That is off of 170. So that is what, 40%? That's a pretty big raise. I want a raise like that. Hey, Super Chatters, what's up? Somebody thinks Congress is underpaid. Maybe they should be paid more because because it leaves them open to more bribes. But I don't think it actually works that way. I think they're overpaid given what they do. They do only damage. If you do damage, you should pay. You shouldn't get paid. Okay, here we go. 1,547 pages. They have 24 hours to read it, which means if you read 250 words per minute, it would take you 62 hours to read the whole document. But they only had 24. So everybody's going to vote on this without reading it. It's just a given. It's just a given, right? And it's going to go to the Senate. And nobody's going to read in the Senate. And you remember Nancy Pelosi once said, she was asked what's in the bill, and she said, well, you'll find out after we pass it. Yeah, Republican bill. All right, but what makes this particular? Oh, by the way, the bill also includes restrictions on investment in China, a bunch of stuff, right? It just throws a bunch of stuff into this bill that they haven't been able to pass separately, so they threw it in here. All right, so what makes this particular interesting is the fact that the Trump administration is launching the DOGE initiative to make government more efficient. And this bill seems to go against that initiative. It's certainly not going to make anything more efficient. And yet a Republican Congress is passing this. A very conservative Republican Congress, I might add, is passing this. I don't know how many Republicans will vote for it in the Senate. We will have to see about this. And so DOGE is I mean, this is I mean, Elon Musk is like, what the hell? It's like, what just happened? Why are they voting on this? And so Vivek came out with a long post about this. This legislation will end up hurting more people than it purports to help. Debt-fueled spending sprees may feel good today, but it's like showering cocaine on an addict. It's not compassion, it's cruelty. Farmers will see more land sold to farm buyers when taxes inevitably rise to meet obligations. Our children will be saddled with crippling debt. Interest payments will be the largest item on the national budget. They're already getting close. And then, he's like, we're grateful for DOGE's warm reception on Capitol Hill. Nearly everyone agreed we need a smaller and more streamlined federal government, but actions speak louder than words. They do. This is an early test. The bill should fail. So Vivek is saying the bill should fail. Elon is freaking out. He's like, whoa. The more I learn, the more obvious it becomes that the spending bill is a crime. It even includes funding for the worst illegal censorship operation in the entire government. Well, I doubt that. But, maybe it's true. I don't know. So, what's going to happen? First task for DOGE. And what happens if it doesn't pass? If it doesn't pass, then what? Government shutdown? I mean, who does that help? And why do you think it is that, they didn't pass a bill earlier? Why is it that this is waiting until now? Elon Musk says, America voted for change, but Congress is not listening. But wait a minute, America voted for change. Did they really? What kind of change did America really want? I mean, ultimately, Donald Trump told them that they would get lower prices. Somehow he was going to manipulate inflation to have lower prices. And they were going to get tariffs, and they were going to get all this stuff, and the economy was going to be great and make America great again. Did he tell them that he was going to stop subsidizing farming? Do you think Donald Trump would have won Missouri and Kansas and Nebraska and Iowa if he had told them that basically he was going to stop, he was not going to reauthorize the Farm Bill? And they certainly were not going to get the $10 billion on top of that. Do you think Donald Trump would have won if he told all those corn farmers in Iowa that because RFK is right about corn syrup, that he is going to shut down corn syrup production and not subsidize them anymore? I don't think he would have won. I mean, the reality is that Americans don't know what they voted for. They don't want to know what they voted for. They want smaller government, but take your hands off of my Medicare. They want smaller government, but they don't want any of the programs they benefit from to be shrunk. They want smaller government, but they don't want cuts in Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, farm subsidies, if you're a farmer, other subsidies, if you're something of the other. This is what Elon Musk and Vivek are going to discover. That senators and congressmen from the farm states are beholden to their voters. And their voters don't want the goodies, don't want the gravy train, don't want the subsidies to stop. They're going to discover that you cannot shrink government unless the American people want it to shrink. But want it to shrink in the details, not just in the abstraction. Everybody wants smaller government, and certainly everybody wants more efficient government in the abstraction. But what about the details? And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We all know the amount of subsidies and pork and goodies that are being distributed within America to all kinds of pressure groups is astounding. And there is no political will to stop it, because there's no principle by which to stop it, and the American people don't want it to stop. They voted Republican, and they vote Democrat, and they vote Republican, but they are not voting for somebody who says, I'm going to stop you getting your check from the government. What they think they hear is, I'm going to get the government to stop giving checks to all those other people that you don't like. You'll still get yours. Don't worry. Washington is a cesspool. It is a swamp, which is much more dangerous and filthy and disgusting and horrible and ridiculous than anything Donald Trump could have ever imagined. Yeah, here it goes, right? So you get somebody like expected, I'll say immigrants. Immigrants get the tiniest little piece. Somebody will say Israel. I mean, it's all, you know, what is it? Crumbs as compared to what farmers get. Immigrants don't get $130 billion. $130 billion. But you go run a campaign on the basis of no more farm bills. We are stopping to subsidize milk farmers in Wisconsin. And we're stopping to subsidize corn farmers in Iowa. And we are stopping to subsidize all the other goodies that we distribute across the country. I mean, ultimately, immigrants are net beneficiaries of the economy by far. None of these other things are. And if your focus is on immigrants, you don't want to limit government. You don't want to actually shrink government. You don't actually want to change government to government that actually respects individual rights and protects them and does nothing else. So Vivek and Elon are going to discover now how big of a swamp, how deep of a swamp. And the fact that the swamp is filled with swamp animals that claim to be on their side. There'll be a bunch of swamp animals that say, oh, we are all supportive of Doge. We are Republicans. We are Make America Great Again. Just don't touch my subsidies. And this is, God, it's unbelievable. Our Congress And our government more broadly is completely and utterly dysfunctional. This budget process is an abomination. Now, the Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the White House starting in January. Will it get better? Will we now see some strategic planning? Will we see a budget bill that actually prioritizes? Or will we see more of the same? Now, we won't know this until January, February, certainly March. March is when the big next budget bill is required, another continuing resolution. And then we'll see the extent to which Elon and Vivek have influence. But the reality is that they will learn what pressure group politics looks like, what the mixed economy is really like, how everybody is out to grab their share or the share that they think they deserve at other people's expenses. Talk about zero sum. This is zero sum. I mean, Doge, I will consider Doge a success. Well, I will change my opinion of Doge when they advocate and enforce and put into practice and pass Congress a bill that over time eliminates all farming support. Farm support that's been part of the U.S. budget since the Great Depression and should be zero. It should be zero. So, let's see. Let's see if Doge is for real. That should be a priority. $130 billion like that would be gone. That is a huge, huge, huge. Right? Instead of worrying about, cutting little fragments of stuff of sweeping up the crumbs, go for the meat. Go for the big stuff. All right, this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. Elon Musk says no bill should be passed by Congress until January 20th, when real Donald Trump takes office. None. Zero. So the government should shut down, because that's what that means. The government should be shut down from now until January 20th. Now, I'm not against that. I'm actually very sympathetic to the idea of just shutting down the government. Shutting down the government is pretty good. I mean, why stop January 20th? That's the real way to shrink government, is to shut it down. Stop it. Government should stop paying the bills. Let's see how well that goes across on the American people. All right. Again, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to have fun. I don't know about other people. Let's see. Yeah. So one of the things Congress did succeed in doing, yay for Congress, right? This last year, united by Democrats and Republicans, is to ban TikTok in the United States. It had to be sold or banned. And that, I think, goes into effect January 10th. Not January 10th, but soon. Like, I think January 19th, so the day before Donald Trump becomes president. So the law, which was enacted in April, set a January 19th deadline for TikTok to be sold or else face a ban in the United States, shut down. That is 170 million users in the U.S. Why? China. We'll talk about China in a minute. China. It's a national security threat that the Chinese know what videos you're watching. It really is. I mean, many of you are watching videos that certainly, if the Chinese wanted, they could blackmail you. Anyway, what the hell? TikTok is sued. And the Supreme Court today announced that it will hear arguments on the 10th of January over the constitutionality of the federal law that could ban TikTok. The justices, again, will hear this, and the issue is, does this bill constitute a restriction or a violation of the First Amendment? Is this a restriction of free speech? Now, even if they hear it on January 10th, we're not going to get a decision before the 19th. And so that's going to be interesting, right? January 10th, I guess, they will still hear the government's argument from the Biden administration. And because the Biden administration supports the banning of TikTok, but Trump doesn't, in spite of the fact that many, many Republicans do. Trump actually does not support banning TikTok. Trump actually met with the TikTok CEO, Suji Chu, in Mar-a-Lago on Monday, right? And he's generally part of a Save TikTok campaign. So it would be interesting to see if the Supreme Court basically says, okay, the law will now go into effect until we make a decision, or whether the site will be shut down until the Supreme Court makes a decision. Hard to tell how this is all going to play out. So this is free speech versus national security. This is how it's presented. A panel of judges of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia unanimously upheld the law. So they ruled the law was constitutional and did not constitute a violation of the First Amendment. We'll see if the Supreme Court agrees with the Court of Appeals or not. And of course, I don't know if what Trump can do to prevent, TikTok from shutting down. That is, there'd have to be a law passed to overturn the existing law. He would have to get Republicans to vote for it. Republicans who've all voted against it in the past, they voted for the ban. Trump is in a bind here. I'm not sure what the strategy is. I think what they're really hoping for is the Supreme Court will bail them out. They'll bail them out. Right. All right. Just a few things about Trump. I did mention earlier that there's this story about Trump coming out against, saying that he is going to knock out the middleman from healthcare. The consequence of that was health insurance, particularly health insurance operating pharmacy benefits managers. All stocks all fell on Monday this week because the assumption was that he was going to destroy that business. Remember when Obama decided to take out the middlemen, use the same language, in the student loan business? And basically what happened as a consequence is the government became the only lender to student loans, the only provider of student loans. And that has been unmitigated disaster. Of course, what this amounts to would be some kind of socialized medicine. It'll be interesting. It could be some ban on pharmacy benefit managers, but I'm not sure that improves our situation as consumers. I think Trump basically supports price controls over drugs, the kind of price controls that Biden put in place. I don't think Trump's going to override those or reverse those. Those were all done by executive order. Trump could get rid of them. I doubt he will. Trump likes price controls. He promised cheaper drugs, and the only way for him to provide cheaper drugs is, again, through regulations and controls. So that's one wacky thing Trump did. I mean, a lot of this is just going to be, wacky stuff that Trump has done. There it is. Okay, so Another thing is, you might have seen that Trump is suing a bunch of media outlets for supposedly defamation. Very difficult to prove a defamation case, particularly against a public figure. And yet ABC just settled a case with Donald Trump for $16 million. And everybody's basically saying ABC settled because Donald Trump's going to be president in a few days, and they don't want to be in a lawsuit against the president of the United States. That's kind of spooky. ABC wants to be on the president's good side. Remember, ABC is owned by Disney. Disney does not want to be pissing off Donald Trump. You're worried about censorship from the left? This is pretty close to as close as you can get to censorship by threat. Now Donald Trump is suing the Des Moines Register for publishing, and its pollster, for publishing that poll a few days before the election that showed Donald Trump losing Iowa, which never reasonably anybody assumed could reasonably happen. But that's supposedly what the poll showed. He is suing for defamation, the Des Moines Register. What does that do to free speech? What does that do to the willingness of newspapers to publish unpopular polls? Is this not a case of basically violating their First Amendment? He is president of the United States, or about to be. ABC folded because they want to be on Trump's good side. They don't want to have to deal. Disney wants to be on Trump's good side. Why? Because it turns out, shockingly, surprisingly, President of the United States has a lot of power. It's why every single CEO in America, significant CEO in America, is going to Mar-a-Lago and kissing the ring. So everybody tells me how big of a threat the left is to free speech, and I believe it, they are. Donald Trump is a huge threat to free speech. Huge threat to free speech. And finally, Donald Trump, going to back to his favorite topic, tweeted today, this morning, actually, at 23 minutes after midnight, because Trump is tweeting. I mean, I don't know when he sleeps. Maybe he doesn't sleep. I don't know. No one can answer why we subsidize Canada to the tune of over $100 billion a year. Makes no sense. Many Canadians want Canada to become the 51st state. They would save massively on taxes and military protection. I think it is a great idea. 51st state. So granted, he's trolling, but this idea of subsidizing Canada $100 billion a year is more massive economic ignorance. I mean, he really does believe that trade is a zero-sum game. That if I buy something from you, right? If I buy something from you, then I'm subsidizing you? That's what he thinks. I mean, that's not what trade is. I mean, he doesn't get the most basic of economic principles. He is, on the perceptual level, he can't think himself out of a little issue like trade being win-win. If I buy something from you, I'm giving you a gift. I'm subsidizing you. I mean, we'll keep returning to this because Trump keeps returning to this. It's really pretty shocking and pretty amazing, and that he isn't called out more of this. It's pretty stunning. Pretty stunning. All right. That's my little Trump rant for the day. We have to keep the TDS going, right? We need to keep that going. All right, let's say a few words about Germany. We've talked about this before, but it just keeps getting worse. And now Germany is heading towards an election in February. It's going to be a really, really, really crucial election for Germany. Clearly, the current coalition of left of center and green parties is not going to be the next government of Germany. They have dramatically failed, primarily because of their energy policy, but really energy policy that was started under Angela Merkel, who was center-right. So it's going to be very interesting to see who the winners are. The two most, not the biggest parties, but the two new parties that are gaining the most momentum. A new left-wing party, which is very pro-Russia, and of course the AfD, right-wing party, which is very pro-Russia. So the pro-Russia political parties are doing very, very well, both at the extreme left and on the extreme right. So this election is going to be crucial for Germany. It's going to be super interesting to see how it plays out, who wins, and what they propose to do. The reality is Germany is ending its second year basically in recession. It's completely stagnating. It is the sick man of Europe, and it's not that Europe is healthy. You've got France next door, which is almost as sick, if not sicker, maybe sicker in a long-term respect. Business sentiment in Germany is very, very dark, very low. It's about as low as it was during the pandemic, right? So business sentiment. The Germany that produces cars, high-end manufacturing, it's gone. The attempt to diversify the German economy to other things has failed. It wasn't a very good attempt. Energy policy in Germany has imploded. It was a massive disaster, unmitigated, huge disaster, with the shutting down of the nuclear energy, with their over-reliance on Russian natural gas, and the massive investment in I always laugh because if you've been to Germany, you'd also laugh. Solar panels and windmills, unreliable energy. German electricity prices are some of the highest in the world, 5 times higher than China. It just makes sense that they can't compete. Partially because of that, but it's not only that. It's the whole insistence on moving towards electric cars by the European Union, by Germany, which has basically made German car manufacturing. It's very hard to compete in an electric car industry that China dominates. Volkswagen profits are down 64%. Audi, my car, or used to be, profits down 91%. BMW, profits are down 84%. Mercedes, profits down 54%. I mean, the German car industry is basically imploding. And, I think Japanese are staying steady, and the United States are steady right now, but are waiting for the death blow. And really, China is going to dominate auto manufacturing in the world. And, all the Germans can think of is subsidize the cars, subsidize the auto industry, throw more money at them, try to negotiate better deals for workers, instead of realizing that Germany needs to divest from automobiles. It needs to restructure its economy. It needs to move into the digital world. It might continue to have a niche in high-end luxury cars, but that niche will shrink as cheaper competition for luxury comes out of Japan and Korea. Korea has great cars, Hyundai, Kia, Samsung actually makes cars. And China, Japan, Korea, and China. That's where you're going to get the cars of the future. And Germany needs to pivot where the United States pivoted, which is towards services and towards a digital economy. And that the capital is there, The wealth is there. What's called human capital, the educated population who can fill these jobs, they're all there. What is not there is a political will to let it happen. If left alone in a free market, it's exactly what would happen. What would happen? But Germany is not a free market. And of course, the regulations, controls, and of course, what Germany really needs right now is massive investment in nuclear, restarting the old nuclear power plants, building new nuclear power plants, and restarting coal, the old coal manufacturing plants. Coal is cheap. They can get it from Poland. They have their own coal mines. I think they're all closed now, but they can get it cheaply from Poland. Reliable source, and get energy prices down. Doubtful that will happen. And if that's the case, Germany continues to be in trouble. What Germany needs is the same thing Japan needs. It needs to liberate its economy. So, we think of the United States as heavily regulated, heavily controlled, but Germany and Japan are worse, in particularly when it comes to labor and entrepreneurship, starting new businesses. The United States, the reason we do so much better than those economies and have been doing so much better than those economies is basically because we have relatively flexible labor markets and we have incredible resources for entrepreneurs, for startups, and we make it very easy, relatively speaking, to start a business and to get it running. Very, very different. And we have a cultural approach to startups and to failure and to success, which is very different than the European model, which resents failure. Anyway, major restructuring has to happen in Germany for them to recover from what's going on. It is bad. It is bad. So as Germany is declining, France is a basket case. The government still hasn't formed a new government over there. Germany's heading towards an election. Nobody knows how that's going to turn out. The United States economy's doing okay, we think, but you know, a lot of political uncertainty, and we'll see where all of that heads. In the meantime, panic over China is only increasing. Like the number of stories I've now seen, there's a big article in the Atlantic today about the fact that we are falling behind. China is zooming ahead. Supposedly the vaunted American war machine is in disarray and disrepair. We can't produce enough artillery shells even to supply Ukraine, never mind engage in a war ourselves. In the meantime, the percentage of global manufacturing that China has is 45%. If they win a war, they could manufacture anything quickly. They have the resources, the ability, they have the manufacturing, and they have the skill set to be able to just beat all of us down. The future, it seems, belongs to China. In 2000, China had 6% of the manufacturing production, industrial production in the world. Today, it's 45%. The US and all its allies combined might match China, but that would require a massive coordinated effort in the case of war. Production of anything. Now, Mark asks in the chat, production of what? Of course, it matters production of what. China can produce a lot of cheap stuff that is irrelevant in war, but it can also produce a lot of drones, which are relevant. Can the U.S.? China's leaders are pouring more money into industrial policy spending, cheap bank loans, tax credits, direct subsidies. They want to raise production in military useful manufacturing industries like autos, batteries, electronics, chemicals, ships, aircraft, drones, and semiconductors. And of course, this doesn't just raise Chinese production, it creates what's called, quote, overproduction, overcapacity, which then spills over, driving prices down and bankrupting American, European, Japanese, Korean, and Taiwanese companies. Basically, China is forcing its enemies to deindustrialize while it dominates the world. And the experts are convinced that China is building, as part of this, the largest military force in the world. Its latest military exercises in the Straits of Taiwan, which saw 100 ships and 50 military aircraft, a 2-day shutdown of civilian air traffic in Taiwan, just a taste of what is coming. China could, according to the experts, could basically take on the United States in a war and beat it. Even in artificial intelligence, it appears that Chinese companies are maybe industry leaders in beating the Americans. We don't know this, but this is by the best intelligence estimates. They have incredible models that are better than American peers, and they are integrating those models directly into their military. China, according to all this, is a real and growing and dramatic threat to the U.S. militarily and from a production perspective. And you're seeing more and more of this, and you will see more and more of this, partially because it's in the Trump administration's interest to promote this stuff or to convince you that this is all true. And they'll get massive support for this from the intelligence community, from the intelligence community. So what do we make of this? So much of this is true. China has a massive industrial capacity, manufacturing capacity. How good is it? Unclear. It certainly can produce a lot of drones. DJI produces great drones. And many of the tech companies in China are quite good. Very good. And were, up until a few years ago, market leaders in many respects. But what all of this ignores is the fact, the reality, that China is a declining power. Yes, it's going to dominate auto production in the world, potentially. But in high tech, in new ventures, in new technologies, China will not be able to compete. Yesterday, we covered the fact that there is real economic angst. People are really upset in China about the stagnation of the Chinese economy. It is truly amazing to me that how little people, including in the United States, have an appreciation for the fact that, freedom matters. That unfree countries just long-term can compete with free countries. The more authoritarian China becomes, the more difficult it is going to be for them to stand up to the United States, to match the United States, to keep up with the technology. And the reality is that Xi knows this to some extent because he is constantly concerned about corruption in his military. You don't get a sense reading what Xi is doing to the military, a sense of confidence in the military. You get a sense of panic. They're spending a lot of money, but the money's not going to enhance the military. Chinese military has zero experience in modern warfare, has zero experience for its weapon systems. They have not exported them to many countries, so they've not been used anywhere in the world. We do not know if any of them work, and if they do, how well they work. Yes, they're good at manufacturing certain things, But to pivot an economy to a war economy, to challenge the United States, that takes freedom. That takes, real talent, real skills, real abilities. I'm not convinced the Chinese have that. And the flip side is the U.S. The U.S. has the capacity to way crush the Chinese, particularly on the military technological front. Now, here the question is, will they? And the question here really is, and this to me is the biggest issue with the defense secretary pick that the Trump has made, is this guy, Pete, whatever his name is he really the guy that can drive the American defense industry towards innovation, towards matching up or exceeding, beating, going faster than the Chinese? Is this the guy who can integrate with Silicon Valley and bring a Silicon Valley attitude to weapons and systems development within the Pentagon? Is this a guy who has an appreciation for strategic thinking? I get that he's anti-just war theory. Good for him. But much more important right now, and he's anti-woke. Good for him. But much more important right now is to have a strategy around beating China, not in a war, but in the lead up to a war. Making sure that China does not feel confident they can win. And to do that, what we really need, America today, a strategist who can think about how to integrate the most advanced technologies into our weapon systems possible. To learn from the war in Ukraine and the war in Israel, how to defeat an enemy quickly, thoroughly, and smartly. How to use drones, whether airborne, seaborne, undersea, or whether on land. We really should be moving towards robots fighting the wars for us. Is this the guy who can do that? Anduril is the manufacturer of American drones, probably the best drone in the world. But can they manufacture en masse? Should the United States build the capacity to be able to manufacture Anduril's drones en masse? Again, I'd like to see, how about, here's a radical proposal. I propose to make the CEO of Anduril, what's his name? Palmer Luckey, defense secretary. Now, that would shake the world. That would suggest that we want to build a 21st century military that is unmatched. We take an entrepreneur, somebody who has actually run a business, managed people, which the current nominee for defense secretary never run a business. We're talking about 3 million employees of the Defense Department. Take Palmer Luckey, who's actually run businesses, who knows what tech is, knows how to integrate tech into defense systems, because that's what Anduril does. Make him defense secretary. That would be a bold move. That would be the kind of move that would deflate whatever ideas China has about military leadership, military superiority vis-a-vis the United States. Sadly, we got the opposite. We got a political appointee who knows little about the military in terms of big strategy, knows little about tech, startups, and has not shown, from what I've seen, any suggestion that he's a strategic thinker. The exact opposite of what we need right now. All right, so, China's a real problem. And I'll talk with Alex Epstein on what we should do about it. But the main thing we need to do is focus on us, on ourselves, on the United States and its capacity and its ability to put on the field the best military force possible. And if that were the case, then I think China becomes irrelevant. China cannot match us when we're at our best. Cannot match the United States when it's at its best. So let's bring it to its best. America, make America best again. Anyway, so more China panic. Yesterday, though, we described in great detail how China's economy is struggling, or not in great detail, but described somewhat. You know, how can it be struggling and yet be so feared all at the same time? Something is wrong in that analysis. All right. Okay. Quick on Tucker and Candace, because they don't deserve more than that. Okay, so Tucker Carlson now is basically, in his interview with Jeffrey Sachs, the anti-American, socialist, UN climate change defender, who is now part of, I guess, the new MAGA team. Basically, Tucker Carlson said, why should I hate Assad? What's there to hate about Assad? He's just an optometrist. He's not a bad guy. He's just an ophthalmologist. He's from London. And he protects Christians. Remember that? He protects Christians. He said this on the show. Protects Christians. Why is he a bad guy? I mean, put aside the torture chambers, the mass grave that was just found of 100,000 people, the gassing, the using chemical weapons on his own people. Why is Assad a bad guy? Well, let's not forget that Tucker was, in a sense, asking a few weeks ago, why is Hitler a bad guy? So Tucker is just becoming a lover of authoritarians, a lover of thugs, from Putin to now Assad. He's becoming a mouthpiece for the Kremlin, and just a completely immoral, anti-American, anti-reality garbage. That's what Tucker's become. And I called it years ago. Immoral, anti-American, anti-reality garbage. Anti-freedom. And it's not that he's naive. It's not that he's ignorant. It's not that he doesn't know what Assad did to his own people. It's that he doesn't care. The enemy is, quote, the left. The enemy is, quote, the West. The enemy are the Europeans. The enemy are the elites. The enemy is capitalism, dare I say. And, just like Jeffrey Sachs, this, disgusting, horrible Jeffrey Sachs, now MAGA is on Bashar al-Assad's side. The side of slaughtering your own people. And his followers will just accept this. No problem. And then on the same show, by the way, interview with Jesse Sachs, Tucker lets it go, having his expert, Jeffrey Sachs, blame Donald Trump and America, U.S., for destroying Venezuela. I mean, here, by the way, Jeffrey Sachs agrees with Ron Paul, another combination that you won't find. It's very bewildering. But once you realize that all irrational people are united by their irrationality, and all people who fundamentally hate America are united by their hatred of America, then you get it. Jeffrey Sachs is saying it is basically the fact that the United States won't trade with Venezuela, won't buy their oil, won't invest in Venezuela. That's why Venezuela is where it is. Not because of the socialism, God forbid, not because of the socialism. It's not the socialist regime that destroyed Venezuela. It's America that destroyed Venezuela. Jeffrey Sachs. By the way, Ron Paul agrees with him, so just reminder of that. But Jeffrey Sachs on Tucker Carlson. And Tucker didn't challenge him because Tucker's embraced the complete anti-American perspective. And just to kind of wrap it up and put kind of the cherry on the top of the cake of the MAGA insanity, Candace Owens, who is on this just campaign to prove to the world how evil Jews really are, and that really all our problems, all our problems are really caused by Jews, is now basically letting the world know that pornography was invented by and was brought to America by, let's just call them, or as Candace calls them, a certain group of people, and they did it in order to destroy Christianity. And one of those people happens to be called Al Goldstein. But I'm not saying which group of people it is. Not sure. So now Jews, you didn't know this, Jews are actually responsible for pornography. I mean, some of you might want to thank the Jews for that. And all with the goal. Pornography was brought into the United States by Jews in order to defeat Christianity. Candace Owens, again, I called it years ago. Sad to say. But yeah, it doesn't get much more pathetic than that. No, Pompey didn't have pornography, Enric. Pompey had a positive attitude towards sex. It wasn't pornography. It was erotic. And I actually think that. So, I think there's a difference between the erotic and the porn. And Pompey was more erotic than porn. All right. That is all I had in terms of the news. That's a lot. It's an hour and a half of news. God, that's a lot. All right. We are behind on the second hour. We made the first hour numbers, but we're way behind on the second hour. And we don't have a lot of Super Chat questions, so this is going to go by very quickly. Hopefully, between now and the end of the second hour, which will be in 35 minutes, we will make up the difference, which is about $110 actually, $210, which we need to raise in order to get to our goal of $500 for the second hour. I've got $750 as the goal because I thought we were going to go for 3 hours, but there are not a lot of questions, so we probably won't make it. But please consider doing a sticker or a question, or however you want to support the show is acceptable. But please consider doing that. Reminder to everybody, this show is supported by listeners and viewers like you. My time, any other expenses that we have in the show, and we have quite a few, are covered by you. Nobody else, by you. So please consider supporting the show if you enjoy it, if you get any value from it. Reminder that Alex Epstein is a sponsor of the show, alexepstein.substack.com. By subscribing to his Substack, you get talking points, useful talking points for your conversations around the dinner table. God, I asked for money and like 30 people left the live stream. Alex is the best thinker in the world today on all these issues related to fossil fuels, energy more broadly, climate change, and environmentalism more broadly. And he provides you with these talking points that you can use for your own thinking and to communicate your ideas. Help us change the world by communicating these ideas effectively. Alex gives you the tools to do that. And this is, we are also funded by the Ayn Rand Institute. Ayn Rand Institute, which runs the Ayn Rand University. Ayn Rand University is the place to study the ideas of Ayn Rand. I'm teaching, starting in January, I'm teaching a 16-hour class on finance for the Ayn Rand University. And then starting in March or April, something like that, I'm going to be team teaching a class with Don Watkins on capitalism. It'll be a 32-hour class on what is capitalism, the nature of capitalism, the position of capitalism, the history of capitalism, the morality of capitalism, the epistemology of capitalism, the economics of capitalism. We'll cover it all. So sign up for Ayn Rand University. Ayn Rand University. Yeah, do it now. You can do all of that. We'll sign up for conferences and everything else at aynrand.org/start here. aynrand.org/start here. And of course, for those of you who would like to support the show on a monthly basis, on a regular basis, in a consistent basis, that'd be great if you went to patreon.com or PayPal and made a contribution there and set up a payment plan, to do $5 a month or $500 a month, whatever you guys decide, to support the Yaron Brook Show. Again, that is how this show exists. Wouldn't exist without you, your support. Glenn, a long, long time ago, right off the bat, $100. Thank you, Glenn. Let me kick this thing off. Happy to be able to catch it live. Hi, Ann. Yeah, that was Ann Chigalila, I think, who was there, and Glenn was saying hi too. So thank you, Glenn. Also want to thank Silvanos and Ryan for their stickers, as well as Stephen, and Tana for their stickers. You can also do a sticker. You don't have to ask a question. Jonathan Honing for a sticker, and Jeremy and John, and whoops, who did I miss here? I think I caught everybody. Oh, yep. I think I caught everybody. All right. So thank you guys. Really appreciate that. And we're chipping away a little bit at a time, but we still have $170 or so still to get to our goal. So please consider doing a sticker, any amount. All right. Thank you again, Glenn. That was very generous. Alex, 150 shekel. That's Israeli shekel, Israeli new shekel. Your view on Steven Kotkin's analysis in general and versus don't negotiate with evil principle. He assumes limited Western aid would prevent Ukraine victory and suggested a Korea-style settlement after the first counteroffensive shocked Putin. Look, I mean, if you assume that the West is not going to get behind winning, then yeah, I mean, what options do you have? But, the point of principle is not that, right? I mean, who is he advocating to? Shouldn't he be advocating to? Shouldn't the principled approach be to advocate for more aid?
I didn't get that.
To advocate for victory? To advocate for Ukraine being victorious? If you accept that Ukraine won't win, if you accept the fact that the United States won't provide them with aid, that Europe won't provide them with aid, then yeah, cut whatever deal you can get, the best deal possible. But as a thinker, advocate on foreign policy, you shouldn't strive for, well, they won't do this, therefore, you should be, this is why they should do this. You should strive for convincing the powers to be, in this case the United States, to support Ukraine so that they can win. That should be the focus. While his analysis is within the limits of how he's presenting it true, it smacks of pragmatism, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If the experts start saying you'll never get aid, well, the West will never provide the right kind of aid, so might as well compromise, then you'll never get the aid. That is a reality, and it'll never happen, and you will lose. But the reality is that a compromise with Putin is just delaying the inevitable. That is, war will break out again if you compromise, just like it did after 2014. 2014, Putin took Crimea and took part of the eastern side of Ukraine, and it was just an opening salvo. And if there was a deal tomorrow, that would be the opening salvo for a future war. So it's a question of whether you want to, as the West seems to want to, kick it down. But if people like Kotkin and others stood up and actually explained this, articulated it, stood on principle, analyzed it on principle, and advocated for the West to be on principle, then maybe the West would slowly move towards principled thinking. But if it's intellectuals default on that, then what do you expect? All right, Anonymous Doe. Capitalism has a philosophical foundation. Are there any negative externalities we should watch out for? Is a plutocracy by powerful corporations possible, even if entered into through voluntary interaction? No, it isn't possible. There's just no scenario where I can see that being operationalized, made real. Corporations could collude over a particular product for a particular period of time, but even that kind of collusion always breaks down. It just can't survive. It can't survive market competition. It can't survive market forces. A collusion on a much larger scale, well, if it doesn't involve force, then it will be broken up by competition. And if it does involve force, then the government needs to break it up. So I don't see what the negative externalities are going to be. Now, the negative externalities in the classical sense of pollution and things like that, and that's what you have a legal system for, and that's what you have the protection of individual rights, to the extent that pollution and things like pollution cross into a clear violation of rights. The government has a job and a role to play. So it's there's just no, I mean, people are looking, I guess you're looking for what's the downside of capitalism? And the reality is there is none. There is none. It doesn't mean all your wants and your wishes and your whims get created, get made. It means individual rights are protected. Corporations are just collections of individuals. They can act voluntarily with others. They can't circumvent competition. They can't prevent alternatives from arising. They can't use force, coercion. So it is an ideal, and it can stay an ideal. You know, of course, consumers can also boycott companies. Responsible citizens can boycott plutocratic companies. Corporations, Mark says. Start a competing business. So there's just, without force, there's just no way to hold on to that monopolistic power. Shrug Life. When Alex does interviews, the hosts agree that there's an anti-human premise to fossil fuel opposition. They always ask why, though, and his answer is never altruism. What is the thought process behind not going deeper? Well, I mean, you have to ask Alex that, not me, right? But I suspect that he's trying to make a point without having to educate people about a whole system of morality. Once he mentions altruism, he has to define it, he has to explain it, and then he has to provide an alternative. And Alex has found a way to basically circumvent that so that he can stay on point, so he can stay on topic. And in a sense, leave the altruism fight to me and ARI and others, and other intellectuals who will come in the future who will take that on directly, more directly. But if he can convince people that it's in their self-interest, fossil fuels are in their self-interest, and they kind of like that fact because they can see it as leading to their flourishing, other people's flourishing. Their self-interest is consistent and not in conflict with other people's self-interest. He's laying the foundations for a much deeper, wider-ranging discussion of the evil of altruism and the benefits of self-interest. Thank you, Shrug Life. But I encourage you, when Alex is on the show next, to ask him that. Robert says, this $20 is for yesterday's great show, particularly the discussion on objectivist morality regarding sex. Appreciate that, Robert. Thank you. It's a tricky subject that people seem to not get. So, no one says, I think the fear of China comes mostly from knowing that that we are not at the forefront anymore. But without the connection, that is because of our own stupidity. All that remains is vague paranoia. I agree, but it's also comes from a belief that statism, authoritarianism, is actually strength. There's strength there. There's focus. There's powerful leadership. They've got a goal. They've got a mission. They're driving towards something. And that gives them a strategic advantage rather than, as I see it, it's a strategic weakness of theirs. Yes, we are weak, but they're weaker because they're statists. They're even more statist than we are. We're weak because we're statist. They're even weaker because they're statists. RDF says, I saw this on Facebook. Please refute. Lending out money assets that a banker does not own is not a right, it's fraud. And it takes on the labor of every other human being. That's something capitalism can be blamed for. Well, I mean, but who said the banker does not own it? Of course he owns it. When you put a deposit in the bank, when you open a bank account, when you open a checking account, you basically sign a contract with the bank. And what that contract is it allows the banker to take your money and use it. You have granted them permission. You have granted them authority to use your money and to lend it out. And it even says in this contract that there are circumstances in which you will not be able to get your money back immediately because of a bank run or because of a liquidity problem that the bank might face. So you are lending the money to the bank. You are literally lending the money to the bank for the bank to do what it sees fit with the money. And you are lending the money to the bank in exchange for an interest payment, maybe, in exchange for convenience, so you can have electronic banking and all of that. Safety, you don't want to hold cash at home. And once you lend that money to the bank, they get to do what they want with it. Now, that's not fraud. And it absolutely is the right of a bank to do it. It's a legal right. It's in the contract. And it has no impact on the labor of others. Indeed, the opposite. That capital is used as loans to businesses that make labor more productive, and they all benefit from it. So labor benefits from it. And therefore, capitalism should celebrate that fact. And indeed, if you're really interested in this point, then you should be taking my course on finance, which I'm teaching at the Ayn Rand University starting next month. We're going to be talking about this. So it's a complete fallacy. Complete fallacy. Yeah, I mean, Capitalist Spy says, read every contract before signing. I don't. I have no intention to. It's a waste of life. It's a waste of time, right? The contracts are ridiculous. I mean, you would never get a mortgage if you have to read the contract. I'm assuming these are all standard. I know the basics. I know the terms, particularly today because it's so heavily regulated. We know how it all fits in. So don't waste your life reading contracts. But if you're not sure how banks work, then read the contract, yeah. If you're not sure how your mortgage works, read the contract. But God, it's one thing to read it, it's another thing to understand it. But that's a problem in the mixed economy. That's a problem with regulations. They're the ones who make these contracts so absurd. Richard just came in with $200. Thank you, Richard. That is incredibly generous. Thank you for all you do. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, Richard. And yeah, Christmas next week. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we've reached our target, which is great. All right. We've got a few more Super Chat questions, and then we will call it a day. Ryan, it's not an exact parallel, but there is something about a CEO being brutally murdered on the street that reminds me of Atlas Shrugged. We're living the novel in slow motion. Scary. Yeah, I agree completely. It's that darkness. It's that fear that dominates society. And clearly, it's the vilification. All in Atlas Shrugged. It's actually worse than Atlas Shrugged. And we always were told that Atlas Shrugged is unrealistic. Ryan says, Americans upset about having the best system available should come live in Canada, where you get to watch your family perish waiting for care. And while waiting, you pay taxes for services you can't get. Yeah. I mean, that's right. It's truly horrific. I mean, I'm surprised there isn't a big movement in Canada right now to become the 51st state of the United States. Or maybe you've got 5 states in Canada, maybe the 51st or 56th state of the United States, because you would immediately benefit from becoming part of the U.S. Yeah, imagine you having the ability to travel within the U.S. to get the best healthcare you can. Anonymous, though, says, for Yaron's raise, let's do it, people. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Shay says, please make a standalone video of the pro-big business segment. You know, it's in Christian's hands. Yes, I will ask him to do that. Thank you, Shay. Anonymous, is there a danger in having an economy with no production? We are basically a service country now, and many people say we need more production. First of all, be very clear, and I say this over and over again, but I guess I need to keep repeating it. We produce more stuff today than we ever have. We are not a no-production country. We just do more services, and we do the production with a lot less people, a quarter of the number of people. Well, we also have more farm production than we ever had before, with 1% of the people we used to have 200 years ago. So incredibly efficient, and we produce a huge amount. And that, the number of people working in production is only going to shrink as more robots do it. And programming robots is considered a service job. Designing microchips is a service job. AI, service jobs. Finance, service jobs. So no, I mean, the important thing in an economy is to be value added. We add much more value than producing t-shirts, than the dumb stuff, than the mindless stuff. Services, like what the United States economy produces, are incredibly value added because they're products of the mind. Matt says, the only threat to the West is its own impotence. The enemy can never beat us when we're on our game. If we let ourselves atrophy, everything changes. Absolutely true. Cook says, good show on CEO Brian Thompson the other day. Thank you, Cook. I appreciate that. Supkaski says, you wake up on January 20th as President of the United States. What are your first 3 executive orders? They have to be within the bounds of executive branch. I don't know. Bounds of executive branch. There's not a lot you can do. There's not a lot that is important that you can do. I'd have to go back and, I don't know, could I repeal all the executive orders passed by all the presidents over the last 40 years? Just repeal them all without even looking at them. Some of them shouldn't be repealed, but just repealing them all would make us better, I think. God. I would lower tariffs to 0 if that was possible. That's one, right? Lower tariffs to zero. What else can you do with an executive order alone? I don't know. Yes, I would have an executive order that basically says that all regulations are frozen. All regulations, that's the same executive order, would be reevaluated based on adherence to the letter of the law as passed when the regulation was created. Right? I don't think you can eliminate the Department of Education through executive order. You have to go through Congress. I don't know, could I sell all government land? Could I auction off all government land in the US? Maybe I could do that. I don't know. Anonymous though, what do you think is going on with Candace Owens? Is this just a move to garner a following, or is she just lost her mind? Oh no, she's lost her mind. There's no question. This is not a strategic move. This is who she is. She's always been an empty vessel. That empty vessel got a bunch of stuff poured into it from Charlie Koch when she joined Turning Point and she became a conservative. And then when she had positive influences for a while, when Charlie Koch was still pro-capitalist and pro-freedom, she was okay. And then over time, as Charlie and the rest of the right became nuts, she became nuts. But since she never had any real foundation, she became nuttier. And she became further and further and further, and it took more and more and more, more and more of the what do you call it, of the right's crazy stuff, and embedded it into what she believes. AKA no executive orders outside of POTUS purview. All executive orders are within POTUS's purview, I think. Yes, I'm pretty sure. Not sure, Supikask. Not sure. I'd have to do some research. No one. Do you think an economy can be liberated by established political powers, or will it always take an outsider like Milej? I mean, it's often been by established political powers. I mean, Margaret Thatcher was an established political power. New Zealand in the 1980s was liberated economically by the left, which had hit a dead end, and they did some really radical pro-market reforms in New Zealand. Islam Ali, can we have a repository of all YBS Q&As? Wow. God, that is a massive editing job, and I don't know how to actually do that. I don't know how to do that. I think if I can, I've let this Yaron AI slip, but that's the answer. It's really to have an AI trained on all my Q&As. So I need to get back to that and see if I can make that happen. Thomas says, I'm wanting to read specifically about the Objectivist philosophy. Which books do you recommend I start reading? I've already read Atlas and the Fountainhead. Well, I would read The Virtue of Selfishness, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, and Philosophy Who Needs It, all by Ayn Rand. And then I'd read OPA, Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand, by Leonard Peikoff. That should keep you busy for the next year. And from there are lots of things you can read. Anything by Ayn Rand, basically, anything. Anything you can get your hands on Ayn Rand. And then there are more advanced texts analyzing the novels and things like that that you could also add. But yes, it's Leonard Peikoff and Ayn Rand. And if you want more, the next thing is all the courses that Leonard Peikoff has provided. And a lot of those have become books now. Understanding Objectivism, History of Philosophy from an Objectivist Perspective, which is Leonard Peikoff's. Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology by Ayn Rand. So There's a ton. Start with the books by Ayn Rand, Introduction to Objective Epistemology, Virtue of Selfishness, Capitalism, Philosophy Who Needs It, and then OPA. Those are the 4. And then everything by Leonard Peikoff after that. All right, guys. Thank you. Thank you to all the super chatters. Really, really appreciate it. We made our 2-hour goal, and we show us 2 hours. Perfect. Thank you. Reminder, December 31st, we will have our new end-of-year show where we will be trying to raise $15,000. If you can write a $500 check, that'll be the ideal time to do it. But whatever you can do and you can support the show, that would be great. Yeah, I need to get that stat on how many shows I did this last year. Robert says, in just a few years, an AI system can be asked to edit everything you've got on YouTube and provide indexing and cross-referencing. If that sounds far-fetched, I know it seems so, but it's not. Yes, I'm not sure it's a few years away. If I was willing to pay, I think for the premium ChatGPT, they could probably do it today. So there's nothing really to stop it from happening. It's just capacity, and they're building such huge computer, what do you call it, facilities, right? That it's going to be available sooner rather than later. All right, I will see you all tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday. Oh, tomorrow's show will be in the evening. Tomorrow's show will be 6 p.m. East Coast time. 6 p.m. East Coast time. During the day, I've just got doctor's appointments and stuff like that, so I can't do it during the day. So tomorrow, 6 p.m., I think moving forward, we're going to have some shows in the evening because I'm going to be teaching more for the Ayn Rand Institute, which is going to take up my days. Yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you to all the super chatters. Thank you to all the listeners. Don't forget to like the show. Like the show. Press the like button before you leave. See you soon. Bye, everybody.